Good morning, afternoon, and evening. My name is Andy Gibby Gibson, and I am your temporary host with the temporary most. And joining me on the first episode of 2025 is Kaylie Horowitz.
Welcome.
And Ian Downs.
He's coming! He's coming! He's coming!
Yes, indeed. It's me and the Terror Twins right here once again, as our dear host, Bo, is braving the inferno out in Los Angeles. We're thinking about all of our friends out in LA right now and wishing them all well.
We're hoping everyone is staying safe and doing well. Bo has told us, yeah, I'm not there at the moment. I've evacuated to Las Vegas. I don't think he needed to go that far, but it's not a bad place to wait things out, so...
No, I'd say that's an excellent place to wait things out. Like, if there's ever any countrywide crisis that we're going to have to deal with, that's probably number one on my list right there.
And you're not just saying that because of the hopes that you end up right in the nexus of Fallout New Vegas?
I think, that's exactly why I'm saying that.
Well, we'll drop ship Gibby to Las Vegas and we'll just deal with the rest of the snow on our end, I guess.
You just hear the muffled sounds of Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby through the background of my recording.
Wanderer plays on a loop for the 500th time. Around. Shut up!
Yes, it's 2025 and I'm still obsessed with Fallout New Vegas. I will not change. I will refuse to change forevermore. But how's 2025 treating the two of you so far?
So far, 2025 has been the week of, God, I'm scared for the rest of the year, but in my own personal and work life, I'm getting shit that's been hanging over my head figured out, done. So cool beans, but given everything else, I'm not expecting that's gonna last long.
Oh, for sure. And Ian, how's that essay coming?
Dissertation. I'm on chapter 2. I've been writing about Dr. Faustus, which shares a lot of sort of interesting theological ties to Nosferatu.
Ian, you can't just spoil the theme of the episode.
It's not a spoiler. It's a lovely little introduction.
Well, it might be the title of the episode, but usually we gotta shoehorn it into whatever we're talking about. Usually we've been fucking around for 10 minutes about, I don't know, like shoelaces or food trucks or something like that. It's what makes us relatable. Come on, man.
Sorry. Okay. I saw some ducks and they reminded me of vampires.
That's how we do things around here. Let's talk about Nosferatu.
Wait, where did you see ducks?
They were out at the little frozen ponds between, not to dox us or anything, but near the boulevard.
You know what else is frozen?
Germany in 1830.
Yes!
Oh.
Now we're getting it. Nosferatu is the name of a pair of movies that we'll be discussing today.
Okay, wait. Let me get this out of my system.
All
Everybody
right,
all
all right,
together.
Nosferatu.
Nosferatu.
That won't be hard to clip together or anything like that. Thank you.
No,
for
it
that,
won't.
Kaylie.
Editor Gibby is so good at his job.
So, Nosferatu. You're probably most familiar with the name because of one random cutaway joke from SpongeBob that confused us for years and years.
Fun fact, my one piece of research that I did bring to the table is that was always meant to be a non sequitur joke. It was just supposed to be something else that got cut from the storyboard because they'd already done the rule of 3 of the things that SpongeBob is doing at night. that other character was supposed to have been the one flickering the lights. And the writer and storyboard director just went, you know what? what's just something that's a non sequitur? I had like monster movie, like magazine stuff as a kid, and like I had no idea who this character was, but he'd just sort of show up. Fuck it, Nosferatu.
Yeah, fuck it, Nosferatu.
So there you go.
So there you go, folks. It's all because of SpongeBob. That has been this episode of the Liberal Artists Podcast. We'd like to thank you for listening.
We're so good at this.
And continuing to listen as this episode goes on. But Nosferatu is a film from 1922 based on Bram Stoker's Dracula, as well as a film from 1979, I believe, and also a film from 2024. How's that? You didn't think that there were 3 Nosferatus, and keep thinking that, because we're not talking about the one from the 70s today.
I think there's also technically 4 because there was one at the end of the 20s that was remaking the first one. They went, oh, this is great. Let's do it again before we even got to the 70s.
The original is considered the first modern horror movie by a lot of people. I don't know if that's necessarily correct, but it, when the legend becomes myth, print the legend, right? Yeah. And Ian, given that you are our resident horror scholar on the podcast, could you tell us a little bit about why Nosferatu 1924? And by 22. The way, when I say that, it keeps 22?
1922.
Oh God, what have I done?
2024, 1922, potentially 1924, potentially 1979 now.
And they say there's nothing new in Hollywood today. They were wanting to remake a same movie less than 10 years apart.
So actually great sort of introduction to this is that some of the earliest films that we have are just remakes and remakes and remakes of Frankenstein, of Dracula, of the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
These movies pop up over and over and over again, basically remade every 3 years with the slightest change in technology.
In other words, we haven't changed in all at 100 years.
In other words, public domain is really good to us.
It's really nice, in fact, because we can get away with some crazy stuff. But Nosferatu sort of sits in this really wonderful moment of film history, as far as I'm aware. I'm not a film historian, let's be clear.
You fooled me so far.
But it sits in this wonderful moment of German filmmaking that is embracing the techniques of German Expressionism in ways that are very clearly using shadows and angles in ways that are really speaking back to World War I and the influenza pandemic of the 1910s.
Yeah, that thing that they just came out of like 10 years prior and we're still reeling with going, what the hell was that?
Not even that. Like when you think about it, 1922, World War I ended in 1918 and influenza was still raging on at the time. That's like if we made a COVID movie right now.
Gee, I wonder what this new one could be.
It would be really weird if Nosferatu had these strange ties to pandemic and plague. It would be really weird if that was just an obvious thematic element of the way that they are employing shadows. We see over and over and over again in the 20th century. We see this sort of really like wild use of the way light is casting shadows onto walls, highlighting how actors appear and disappear into sets. Mm-hmm. It's this frankly creepy story of a young couple that is separated and then like hounded by an evil spirit, which, who doesn't want to think about in the 20th century?
And I think one of the other things is that this is a silent movie, and for the most part, like, you're going to see all dialogue represented through quick cuts over to text on screen. So it's not necessarily like you have to dub something. You can just write the text up there and say like, oh yeah, I remember seeing their lips flapping for 10 seconds or so. Here's the paragraph of text that they just said. That's something that you can convert from, German to English and still have the ideas carry across there. And also with silent film acting, it's pretty much theater acting for,
exactly.
playing to the cheap seats and everything. Like, even if like they're from a completely different culture, speaking a completely different language, you're able to pick up on like, oh, this is the mood that they're feeling right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Those pantomime actors, they can show emotion, and horror is a really easy emotion to show, especially when you can grab a window and go, oh!
I'm just thinking of the sailor and the ship scene. He's nailed it. Like, his face discovering a vampire just sitting on a box. Ah! It's great.
I know that the two of you got to watch all the way through the 1922 Nosferatu. Like, what were your impressions like? Was this your first full length silent movie that you had watched before?
So this was the first full length silent film I had definitely watched, but I watched this originally in Herr Martin's German class.
Shout out to Herr Martin!
Where we watched Nosferatu in the original German, which, as you realize, is silent. So it's really easy to watch in the original German.
We always used to be jealous in the Spanish classes because we actually had to work. And we were just like, oh, the German classes just get to watch Lord of the Rings with the German subtitles on. Must be nice, I guess.
No, sometimes we watched artsy films like Nosferatu.
Ooh.
Very
artsy.
But please continue on. You said that this was your first silent movie.
Yeah, I first full length silent
Yeah.
film for sure. I mean, you see some of the early Charlie Chaplin.
I was about to say, I think the
stuff,
longest I'd seen prior was like shorts, like Charlie Chaplin sketches, short film, kind of like what again, not a film scholar, but that sort of era of like, we know how to make movies, but they're not necessarily full length hour projects. They're these sort of like, I kept calling them like vaudeville pieces, like vaudeville on film for
sure.
all intents and purposes. That I think this was the first time it's like, oh yeah, this is a full hour and some odd movie with set changes and varying location and travel and cast of characters that are like, I think it's 8 actors that are all playing everybody for the most part. Like, again, your stage actor roots of just like, and I would just put a cloak over somebody and now they're a whole new person. Or this guy gets a mustache now and he's a totally different character.
Some really intense sideburns.
One thing we love about the mid 1800s, we love a good sideburn.
It is funny to think about it in that, like, I haven't really watched a feature length dialogue heavy silent movie before. So this was definitely a shift for me. I have watched, a bunch of things like Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin, and those are much more like action heavy. But at least for the first portion of the movie, there's a lot of discussion, there's like exposition going on, and it, for a modern audience to watch a movie that's over 100 years old and be like, all right, they're going to talk and then we're going to find out what they were talking about, it is such a distinctly different experience. Like, it feels like a total time capsule of like how you're using the medium, because you have those severe limitations, but you're still able to keep up with the story and feel what these people wanted you to feel as you're viewing it. So we've talked about a lot of things in the lead up to it.
Well, I think what you mentioned about the limitations, that's what I think my takeaway of the original is one of my favorite things about it, because this is always heralded as not only one of the earliest surviving examples of a horror film, and it's a miracle for all intents and purposes that it did survive, which I can shit on the Stoker estate a little bit later. I love when we talk about things that have petty drama and spite-fueled rage.
It's what we live for.
I really enjoyed where this is a film made in the 20s with no budget, with an idea of, hey, this Dracula thing took off really cool. Let's just make that because it's cool. It's a cool story. But yeah, we have really no means, no budget, no nothing. And you can tell. And that's kind of what makes it funny and like really quirkily charming in some ways, because there's parts of it that are very unsettling and creepy. Like, I can't imagine experiencing this for the first time as somebody in the 20s with no, like, film's a new thing. You're seeing these kind of techniques probably for the first time, whereas I'm sort of watching this the shot of the carriage leading up to Orlok's castle being not only sped up, but also they put a negative filter on it that I'm just like, oh, this is me tinkering with Windows Movie Maker when I was 12. Like, having those sorts of, like, I could see how they did that. It's amazing they were able to figure that out in this point in time. Same with, like, the way you could tell there's, like, continuity mistakes between placement and jump cut, and we had to get a wide shot and we needed to get a closer shot, or all these little things that, like, it's not about it being a great movie, but it's so fun to see as a, like, here's whatever, every year we keep trying to be like, this is the greatest new film to ever exist in American cinema. No, it's this movie now. And then go back to this. And it's like, here were just people excited about a story, wanted to make some really cool and creepy shit, and just having fun. Like,
all I'm
I
seeing
love
is
it.
the Spider-Man pointing meme of, like, German expressionist filmmakers in the 1920s and you at 14 on
Me
Windows.
making AMVs on Windows Movie Maker and Final Cut Pro.
And thus a portion of the original self exists in the new self. I think you're absolutely right that, like, despite limitations and difficulties with, like, having to brave a new medium, there are still moments in this movie from 103 years ago that still resonate with us today. Tell me, how did you both feel when you get the shot, like the first shot of Count Orlok, the vampire, the iconic original filmed version of the monster on screen? What was your feeling when you see all that?
There's a really funny thing, of course, where we see Orlok before he's even Orlok, of course.
And I go, it's Robin Hood, motherfucker.
He's the coachman, but you get there, and you're sort of like, well, that's the creepiest dude I've ever seen. And then he's also the master of the house. You go, oh God, he's everywhere. He's just,
here,
it's just
he's
this
there,
creepy
he's
guy.
everywhere.
But there's the moment, and Eggers really sort of uses this moment quite brilliantly. The archways that Hutter walks through to see Orlok standing beyond the gate. There's the sort of two rows of archways leading into the castle. And that's pulled straight from the original, because here is Hutter in this sort of like, oh, it's blue lighting, and here I am standing outside these gates, and there's Orlok as this, like, weird slender figure with his hands up like a velociraptor. That you just go, oh, I just saw that. Good job.
I've seen this one. It's a rerun. Anyway.
What is a rerun? So, why do you think, like, so far down the road after everything that we've already seen, like, what is it about this movie that still holds firm as, like, both an icon and an inspiration for so many horror movies, for so many vampire movies that we see out there? Like, like what's the vibe there? Is it in that horror? Is it in that gothic environment that's just dripping with atmosphere? Like, what do you think is, like, what makes it live on today?
Well, like, every culture kind of has a various take on vampire myth, whether that is literally a bloodsucker or some kind of entity that, you know, is basically immortal or just continues to not die, whether that is a figurehead for the rich leeching on the poor and underclass, or some other interpretation. Like, we we have, or literally, a blood-sucking monster that needs to be thwarted with iron stakes and garlic and what have you. There's always some form of it. And so when we get to this point of novel writing and Stoker goes, hey, this creepy fucking castle, I could make a vampire story about this place. Suddenly, I sort of, my pop culture 2 cents here is that once we solidify it down to one object rather than like mythos and like cultural ideas of these monsters, we have a thing to latch onto, and there's an interest in that as a character or a dynamic. But because of that, there become spats and copyright disputes of, no, but this is mine. and I think that's one of the things that has kept the vampire going, is everyone wanting to come in and slap their own 2 cents down on, no, you're doing it wrong. It should be scarier.
This is my OC. Don't steal.
Kind of like, no, they should be hotter. No, they should be scarier. No, garlic doesn't kill them, you idiot. That would be stupid. Like,
this is my OC. He's named Vlad, and he'll kick your ASS.
Like, kind of. And so I think that's part of why, like, again, on top of what we mentioned earlier of just like things in the public domain are great for the entertainment industry when you just need to come up with something based on an already cohesive narrative and you can tool with it how you will to make your version. But once we start attaching, like, well, we made this one in Ireland, and then we made this one in Germany, and then they all kind of came to the States and got jumbled around with God knows what else. Like, there's an excitement in some ways of everyone just setting up their own camps, and then those schools of thought churning out new camps of how do you make a monster? How do you make a vampire? Especially looking at the idea that like the Nosferatu was a special, like, is its own name of a like dark spirit, dark entity, that it's not vampire. And yet now it has become so attached at this point. Like, the lore constantly changes as we kind of duke it out over OCs, and that's kind of what makes it more fun, whether we come back and revisit the old stuff or make new stuff based on it.
You've got this cultural tradition that resonates globally, and then taking some of those elements of that and putting it into a new medium. I can see how that, becomes an icon, part of, even if Nosferatu isn't necessarily like originally meant to have that vampiric aspect, we've associated them so closely together that they're inseparable now.
And there's something fun about knowing what we know of like every other vampire version under the sun sort of thing. Coming back to Nosferatu is exciting because, like, to your point, they're playing with technology in very specific ways of, well, we want to show off this idea. How do we do that? We want to show that these things are happening at nighttime, but we need to film in the daylight so that we can capture light in the cameras. Let's just put some blue cellophane over this, and we call that nighttime. And then when it's yellow, it's daytime, and then red is like the sun is rising or the sun is setting. Like, let's get around that way.
When there's a dark yellow, it's our Mexico filter, because how else are people gonna know we're in Mexico?
Or, well, I mean, like that, or then we have these, like, let's take a still of our actor in the corner of the room and like make it transparent overlay for the rest of the film strip so that it creates a strange double image. Like, there's some exciting stuff that we play with based on the limitation of the technology. Yeah. And I realized seeing 22 Nosferatu is like, yeah, people keep saying he looks like a rat. Like, that's not a vampire. He looks like a rat. I'm like, this is a movie that becomes about plague. I think it's, and there's rats everywhere. I think it's a little fitting that his 2 vampire teeth just look like rat teeth as opposed to the canines in the side of the mouth vampire fang look.
It's just making me laugh, like imagining a vampire with the buck teeth instead of the Like the sexy canine thing is an iconic, like, I'm a sexy monster look.
Oh, yeah.
But you just have some buck-toothed yokel that tries to nibble on your neck. It's just like, we're taking you to the monstrous orthodontist. We're going to get you vampire veneers because this is not a look that's working for you, honey.
But it is it is working for Count Orlok here, because in so many ways, and I might be wrong about it, but I think the Nosferatu is based on Romanian and Romani mythology specifically. Yeah. I could very well be wrong about that, though, so don't be like, you idiot, in the comments.
We don't have people commenting. I restricted their YouTube comment privilege. I'm just kidding. No, yell at Ian all you like in the comments.
Just but me.
The idea, of course, that this Count Orlok isn't a vampire. He's vampiric, but he's not a vampire. He's a Nosferatu, which is a completely different way of thinking about this sort of monstrous body. And yet, of course, as you point out, it's become conjoined to Dracula in many ways because they ripped off Stoker's whole plot.
It's like Tipper Gore looking at pornography. She's looking at Count Orlok and she's just like, I know it when I see it. That's a vampire right there.
But and one of the like really fascinating things, of course, for this early monster movie is that, and we're going to go into Cohen's theses of monsters, of course, but he represents more than just himself. Count Orlok is an investigative force into the fears and desires of the German people following World War I, following the influenza pandemic. Here is a man from way off in a distant land who's buying up property, who's putting things and bringing in disease and bringing in problems and
writing contracts in his strange other language.
And of course, this echoes what Bram Stoker is also somewhat afraid of, which is land rights and property rights. He's an English citizen, where the question of people coming in to claim land that is not theirs, but that they can afford to buy, and then suck all of the nutrients out of all of the life, all of the vitality out of the land. I think the Irish know a thing or two about that.
Oof. You kind of can't talk about the original Nosferatu without realizing that a lot of the design elements when it comes to the monster are, unfortunately, based on how the Germans were feeling about the Jewish people and stereotypes about Jewish people at the time. Especially when, within the next 10 years or so, you see the Nazis rising to power. It's
womp, womp.
Horror is a looking glass in many ways for the things that people at the time were afraid of. And despite all of, the influence and so many of positive qualities about the movie, you can't remove the fact that so much of this fear is interconnected with that stereotyping of, a minority within their society.
And of course, this happens even now. Count Orlok doesn't necessarily look like a Jewish representation in Eggers' film, but he is still a body that has to be understood semiotically. And this Orlok is an old wizened man who is actually very strong and very powerful and very quick. And there's something very exciting in Eggers' version about the old-aged person that is still too vital, that is still too significant in the moment, who can't just be killed. We have to deal with them without just killing them.
It sounds to me like we are about to talk about Nosferatu 2024, which whenever I say that, sounds like I'm saying Blade Runner 2049. We just see Ryan Gosling just talking to like a vampiric Harrison Ford with big canine teeth. where he's just like, yes, my name is Decker.
Harrison Ford says a slur again, but with vampiric buck teeth.
Oh, don't remind me of the original cut of Blade Runner. Just watch the director's cut version. Anyways, let's talk about Nosferatu 2024.
God.
Robert Eggers is
Robert, my boy.
He's a prolific director, especially in the horror genre. You may be familiar with some of his works, such as The Witch, which I always want to call The Vitch.
I just do because I have no self-control.
The Lighthouse and The Northmen.
Fortnite.
Thank you for that, Kaylie.
Schnapps?
We're just building every time Eggers uses Willem Dafoe, I'm going to take whatever, like, one or two lines out of that movie and build Ian a soundboard of all of those clips.
Coming to you in 2025, the worst soundboard since 1998.
It's just turning into, like, I think this is going to be you in 40 years, dear.
Welcome to the Dafoe radio station, Schnapps.
So, Nosferatu 2024 is, I think it is fair to say, a remake of the 22 version.
It's not like a reinterpretation. Eggers went, no, these shots are great. Let's just do them with better quality and a fuller set.
Yes.
Do it again.
That same story of the young land agent being whisked away from his beautiful young wife and having to go make a deal with the devil, in essence, without
real
him
estate.
Yeah. Oh, God. Now I'm just thinking of more SpongeBob things where it's just like, I've got it. Let's get naked. Nah, let's save that for when we're selling real estate. And then we just cut to the final shot of the film where it's just naked. Anyways.
But also, Eggers does offer the additions of really focusing on Ellen back at the home front in so many ways that this becomes so much more about her and her connection to this monstrosity in a way the film is just the original 1922 is just like, yeah, and I guess that's a way we'll solve the problem is this woman, yeah.
Which is definitely something that I want to talk about. And also, I want to say, this movie is way more focused on sexuality than the original, which
everyone keeps saying it's so horny.
Well, when one of the first scenes of the movie is like this dream about this connection between Ellen and Count Orlok, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't notice that there were 3 X's on this theater when I walked in.
We are a minute and 30 seconds in here. Robert, what are we doing? Hello?
Horror movies show us what we are afraid of, and if there's one thing we've learned, it is that people are afraid of the female orgasm. It is terrifying to them.
Yeah.
Eggers went, you know what's scary? Not vampires. Women having pleasure.
Give me the back-to-back double feature of Poor Things and Nosferatu 2024, cowards.
So, in a lot of ways, it is the same story, but the shifting of the focus from Thomas to Ellen tells such a different story. Like, there's a lot of focus on when she's feeling this shadowy connection between her and the Count, even from a long distance. She's having these bizarre dreams. They keep describing her as a somnambulist, which shout out
She's not an ambulance.
Shout out to my AP English class in 12th grade, because that's the only reason why I was able to go, that means sleepwalker, whenever they bring it up, and that's because we had to read Heart of Darkness. And that was a vocabulary word for us.
We read that too. I don't remember that vocab word.
But anyways, she's having these night terrors. And of course, she's being treated with the finest medicine of 1800s.
She has too much blood.
She's got too much blood. Here's some ether. We're gonna put this ether rag on her face.
Love that.
Okay, that's just
give her
what
some more
anesthesia
ether.
is. That's just what like everybody in the theater had this moment of like, oh my god, it's like that's what we still do.
Yeah, it's what we do.
It's a different drug, but like that. There was nothing different.
It's done a little bit more gently than, smothering a rag over this person's face.
Does this smell like chloroform to you?
Is it? Frankly, the last time I went under for anesthesia, the nurse had it in her hand like that and went, all right, just count backwards to 10.
I don't think she was given the luxury of the backwards counting there.
She was basically unconscious, though. We didn't see her get the ether treatment. We only saw her get the additional ether treatment.
Yeah, the last 1-2.
Well, a really great statement that I saw about this movie is this is a film about the dangers of not listening to women, because
Absolutely it is.
Constantly with all the choices that are made, a lady says, hey, this isn't a good idea, and the man says, don't you worry your pretty little head about it. I'm just going to leave for 6 weeks' time so I can go to this creepy castle in the middle of nowhere. Everything will be cool. Don't worry, little lady. You're just having, conniptions. You're just feeling hysterical. It's not that something otherworldly and terrifying is happening to you. And I'm sure by ignoring your pleas, the entire town won't come to ruin right now. I don't think that's something.
This couldn't get any worse.
I don't think it's something that the folks of the 1920s would have been focused on as much. And I think that's a really good way to shift the focus of this movie, especially because so much of it is about that connection between Orlok and Alan.
To keep the Back to the Future reference train going, guess you're not ready for that, but your kids are going to love it.
But it's also, frankly, this really exciting question that it's Defoe's character, who I think is like Bevan or something. It's a weird name.
He's Willem Dafoe. Let's be real, people.
It's Defoe's character, who is a strange occultist who has been studying things. He's in line with Paracelsus and Agrippa. I'm a sailor. Oh, it's about alchemy, which was a great moment. I don't know those names. I do business for a living. Tell me something else.
Yeah.
But this really wonderful thing, which is that, there is something beyond us. And I don't know what that is. There is something that is beyond the veil. There is something that we don't necessarily understand, and that rationalism has tried to explain away, that the Enlightenment has tried to explain away, but it just can't, because it's not explainable.
You have this horror that's two-pronged, really, when Count Orlok moves into the neighborhood. In that you do have this horror. There goes
the neighborhood. No, literally, there's all these fucking rats. Oh my god!
We just crashed a ship in the harbor. But
can I get an edit of this trailer as like a "There Goes the Neighborhood" comedy?
Well, in essence, you do have this two-pronged horror of one, the beyond understanding of curses and this manipulation of his power. That shadow stretching across the entire town. Their science of the day had never had a chance of explaining any of that. But also you have this real tangible problem in that the scary demon man also brings in a ship full of plague rats. It's a literal plague ship that comes to town. And so that is the realistic that people actually have grips on. That is both barrels of horror.
If there's one thing we certainly don't have a grip on still, it's the second one.
Proper pandemic management. It made me laugh so hard when they're in the ship and there's rats crawling all around a dead guy inside of the ship, and the captain gets really close to the body with a light, and he's just looking at him, and I'm like, you're gonna catch something, ain't you? And then he's like, all right, we need to quarantine these guys. It's just too late, my guy. Like, you've been poking around the plague corpse. What do you expect to happen?
Well, but it's still not germ theory yet. This is 1830s. We're still about 10 years away from germ theory. We're still about 20 years away from like actual microbiology happening.
And yet, I will say the man should know about the miasma.
Well, yeah, but again, that's about breathing. That's about, is the air stale? Is it safe?
They're underneath they're under the ship. The air's all bad anyway, my guy. Don't put your face next to the face.
Look, I need to know what killed the guy, and it might have been the rats. Might have been.
I don't want to be too certain, but maybe it was the rats.
Maybe it's the rats that are climbing all over the corpse.
But the real thing, of course, is that isn't what killed the guy. Mm-hmm. The thing that killed the guy is the vampire that you've accidentally boarded onto your ship.
Yeah.
And the Nosferatu. They're going to yell at me in the comments again.
You're absolutely right, though. And I think it's so clever that they have this crisis going on at the same time, in that the entire city is freaking out about the plague, the rats, everything like that. And that's in part why there basically is nobody else that can help with the real danger that's going on with this terrifying monster man, and why, Dr. Willem Dafoe's help is even more necessary. He's the only guy that has any sort of idea what this even could be. He's like the researcher and the impromptu leader in that moment. And it's just like, all right, you're crazy, but fuck it. You're the best shot we've got right now. And I like that we also get to spend time seeing the impact of this curse that's come to town. Because it's not just in the main characters. And shout out to all of the performances in this film and all of the ways that we show how those main characters have been impacted. Like when Ellen fully freaks out, has the eyes rolling up into the back of her skull.
So good.
Full on exorcist, just like, all right. But also we get to see it in the background. Like the entire town turns into, the site of an epidemic. And we get to see it with characters like the Hutter's best friends, what with the harbor marding and his wife.
Shout out to casting, because I'm blanking on the actor's name that played Harding, but that is like almost 1-to-1 the same dude, same look from 1922 to 2024. I was like, you can see where we were inspired by the way Ellen was styled and costumed, or Hutter in the original, but like Harding was the same. That I'm like,
it actually was the same
descendant?
Actor.
Who is
it
this
was
man?
the same actor. He's a real vampire. He was there for the diversity initiative.
Robert Eggers got in the time machine and grabbed a German man from 1922 and forced him to play the same role again. That's why he was so good at turning to madness in the last act there. But I mean, you get to see like his best friend, like his entire life getting torn apart as a result
the
of
moment
this.
They have that first like gossip sesh before he's about to go head out, and he's like, we're expecting again, like, oh, aren't things so great? I'm like, oh no, this is all going to end so horribly for every single one of you, isn't it? Oh god.
Haha, your wife is expecting. That means she will die. I have seen a movie before.
I will also say, this is the first movie since probably Hereditary where they actually show kids getting axed on film.
Right? I was like, I don't think they're gonna make it, but maybe at least we'll spare getting oh no, okay.
Nope.
Then immediate cut to small coffins. I'm like, oh.
Which, frankly, good job. Like, he must know some people in the undertaking business. He got those coffins next day. He was like, all right, I've had these on standby just in case.
They just put
Like-
the coffins in the microwave for a couple of minutes and shrunk right up.
No, but like in a massive city plague, this guy has coffins for his whole family the very next day, and we know it's the very next day because she's only given 3 days. It's a crazy moment of like, did you have these? Were you ready? I always make sure.
This is very forward thinking because we're not in Victorian times yet, right? I know those guys were like super jazzed to die. Like they were really in on the whole thing.
We just went through a lot of it in the like earlier half of the century that by the end of it, we were just like, you know what? Fuck it. If we go, we go.
Just a bunch of goths at ye old Hot Topic.
Albert did it and he was cool, so we should all do it too.
Okay.
Get your coffins. Get your baby coffins. Get your coffins.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that, like, it is not a movie that's afraid to go to the extremes in order to, like, shock people.
Whether that's, like, death, sickness, grotesqueness, or sex. Like, a lot of those are taken to a, like, real extreme and then some.
Yeah, like, this is not somebody who is, like, maybe we should try to make a PG-13 cut just to make the money there. No, this is somebody who was like willing to push those boundaries of these like taboo topics and still make it, you know, scary. Is it mildly annoying to me that most of the big scares are all your like jump scare loud music moments when I think you could have done more with like the subtle moments? Sure, but I still jumped.
But which one got you worse? The ship or the staircase?
The staircase. The ship,
Yeah!
I was just like, all right, look right there. Where's Waldo? There's Nosferatu
exactly.
right there.
No, Ian and I walked out and Ian was like, I hated that so much. I'm like, me too, because the ship, you at least get the like he's descended. We hear the background noise fade away until it's like just his breathing.
Yeah. And
we're you know, you're giving those telltale signs of a jump scare that's coming. You see something fleshy move, you go, okay, I think I know what's about to happen. And like, yeah, it's still bad.
Yeah.
But then that shot of Anna coming out of the bedroom, it goes dead quiet. And we stay there for so long. And then just pan over to the staircase. And then I'm just like, Robert, what the fuck are we about to do here? Like, this is either going to be so mundane or like absolutely terrifying. Stop it.
Well, and one of the reasons it works so well in that moment is that we don't have any real information as an audience about what Count Orlok could be doing here, about what is possible in this house. On the ship, we're like, oh, we know he's there. We know he's been killing people already. He's obviously, like, he can do it here. Here in this house, this woman, like, we don't know at all what could happen to her. Like, she could be thrown out a window for all we know. Like, we have no clue what could be coming, which I think makes that one such a much more like, okay, but could we get to the answer? I'd like to know.
No, I hated it, but it was very well done.
Yeah. Very good job, Bobby. Don't do that again.
Stop it.
Don't you show me a staircase in the dark.
There are a couple of quick hits that I want to make because I got really excited about some of these things. One, I like that this is a horror movie in which the lighting actually helps you see things in the dark.
Yes.
Like, it has been done so poorly before.
For a movie about so much shadow.
Yeah.
You could see everything you needed to see remarkably well.
Yeah.
Well, except for me, who was getting blurry visioned like a third of the way through the movie. I was like, I can't see anything. What was happening?
Anything could be on screen, and that's what makes it so scary.
It was the crossroads moment specifically for me.
Yes.
That I was like, that's where I was like, I have no idea what I'm supposed, like, my eyes are not focusing on this screen right now, which might just be that I'm bad at movie theaters, frankly. But I think the overlaying that was giving it this this blueness, the idea of cellophane over the camera lens that Kaylie has brought up. But I felt as though I was looking at a moving daguerreotype. Like I felt like the blues specifically were reminding me of that early photography form, and so it was this weird, uncanny.
Yeah, like the whole edge of the frame is like faded, backgroundy blur versus what's your main thing in focus, front and center sort of look.
Yes, I love that. Like with the visual design of this movie, it is just dripping in atmosphere. I was just like, this is the most gothic thing I've ever seen before. Food, water, atmosphere. And that's before we even see Count Orlok. Like the whole trip after he leaves the inn and like going to the castle, like the empty moving carriage, the way that it
the
shows
door just opening was so funny to me. I don't know why.
but like the way that, you know, we feel how desolate and bleak it is with the snow piling on, and it just felt like you were completely alone. Moments like that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
But there is one thing that made it more detrimental for my viewing experience.
Thousands of rats.
No. Like, I'm down for tons and tons of rats. Like, we're rats. We're rats. We are the rats. We pray at night and stalk at night. We're the rats. We all know.
We all know the rats. We all know the rats.
Dafoe's the giant rat that makes all of the rules.
Let's see what kind of trouble Robert gets us into. No, my biggest problem is that with the design of this monster, they gave him a mustache. Agreed, though. I know that you're trying to directly do Vlad the Impaler.
Yeah.
But as soon as this guy comes into the light for more than like 5 seconds, I'm just like, my guy, I know like you want to be scary right now, but you look like you're in a 70s skin flick right now. Like with that like big old bushy thing.
Kratos ass motherfucker, what are you doing here?
The Lorax.
Yes, he's got a Lorax mustache.
I speak for the rats.
And I'm just thinking of like the sexy guitar comes in like waka 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 waka, and he's just like, "Hey Ellen, you wanna go for a mustache ride?" Like there's so much that's good, especially in like the final image. I love that it's like a direct callback to like the whole Death and the Maiden motif.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Like the way that they compose that final shot. I love that like when he feeds, he bites somebody in the heart. I haven't really seen that. I've seen like vampires rip out a heart and eat it and all that.
Sure.
But to like have that balanced with like all of the feeling and imagery of this like sensuality and this eroticism, I think there's so much brilliant about that. And of course, shout out to Bill Skarsgård for his performance, because Billy's just good at things, but god damn it, take out a pair of clippers and just get that caterpillar off your face. This movie would be so much better without the mustache.
Good at being scary, you know? I don't know. It didn't bother me as much, I guess, mostly just because, like, again, thinking of at least the, like, Vlad the Impaler idea, thinking of that, like, very, where we're, like, so far into East Europe, it might as well be Russia kind of an idea. That, like, it fits in some ways, but also I'm like, I think I'd be more creeped out if there was no mustache, because then you've just got like a weird buff Gollum thing going on here, and I don't like that.
Long Gollum.
Like bald skin peeling and oozing in places.
He's just Gollum with good posture. The mustache certainly helps, like, give him an element of humanity, and you compare him to the 1922 one where you're like, Why does Hooder not just like turn around and leave when he sees that creature there? Like that's a freaky little guy over there, and he's like
Pinhead Larry, motherfucker.
I've got a job to do. I'm fresh on the scene.
It's like you could have a job to do, but if you see a white over there, leave, get out. Over there is the undead harbinger of my destruction. I better go sell him some real estate.
Versus like the modern version is just like Ron Swanson's like ancestor from the old country.
I mean,
we were so close. We were so goddamn close to having like a modern gothic classic here, like a real like true to form awesome movie, and it's just that damn cookie duster, that crumb catcher. I'm realizing how many terms I know for mustache now.
I was just about to say, how many other synonyms for mustache can you use here, Gibby?
I'm sorry that like I can't help but think of Ned Flanders and Ted Lasso when I see him trying to creep on Ellen here. I'm so sorry.
But maybe that's what we're supposed to be seeing. Ned Flanders here to abduct this young maiden.
Ned Flanders would never have premarital sex.
But they are married, remember?
Oh, yeah. With their covenant and everything.
That's one of the things that I do appreciate in this update is this level of like, if we're still going to talk about like the maiden and blood sacrifice and whatever to the death god, death spirit, destroyer of things.
Deathbird.
A deathbird, that's right. I do appreciate that this one, like on top of kind of putting some focus back onto Ellen as opposed to just making her like the sacrificial piece that throws herself down on the wire at the end. There's something very fun. And again, coming back into vampire lore as a whole, whether it's Stoker and making it sexy, whether it's like other forms of this idea of blood sucking and like mystique and intrigue and having a womanizing, like I can hypnotize you, whatever sort of thing. Like there's a sexuality and a sensuality that gets thrown around with vampire lore that I was actually very surprised and excited to see that like in this, how do we update Ellen? There is also so much more about like the women's agency in their place in the relationships to both their husbands, to her in this conflict of like, what do I do when I know, like, not that I'm weird for having done this specifically, but she goes on about this, like, I've had this weird foresight thing that got me in trouble before, and I was so bound to being a respectable member of society, but I can do nothing but carry that shame, and yet I still just feel things because I am a young woman, and I love you, but I can't split my brain both these ways. And so there's a great meme going around that's like, babe, please no, and like the Chad side profile, it's like, I can't, where it's Ellen, babe, please, I'm so horny, I can't, I have to sell real estate. But like I don't know, there's something very exciting and tragic, like ultimately, that comes out of that relationship between the two of them, where he's trying. This all starts of just like, I want to be able to provide for you and give us both the life that we deserve, and like if I do this job, we will have that. And it, for her, just is so much about like, I want the here and now with you. I don't need all of this. Like, you know, again, society versus the individual / the couple and how they fit into the grander picture kind of stuff that, you know, ultimately just really goes wrong. But hey, shout out to Nicholas Hoult. I fucking love this man so much. He's
good in everything. The man's just good.
I fell in love with his like acting style in The Great, and I really love seeing that not only can he still kind of use his like, I don't want to say comedy chops in this, but like comedic timing of moments, while then still really being able to sit in the more dramatic, like intense moments really, really well.
He's really great at being somebody who's in way too deep over their heads. Like, he's in Mad Max Fury Road as well, where he's just a grunt that gets swept up into the adventure, and he's just like, I'm terrified, but fuck it, we ball.
Right. Like, I adore him so much. There I think what just like sold me as like as everything comes crumbling down as we build and build towards the climax in the end, and we have to kill the vampire, is when the Nosferatu. Ellen or Orlok is when they argue. Ellen and Thomas argue, after they've both just been having a fucking time. And she throws the china cabinet over, which was one of these shots of like how Ian was talking about. There are things just that kind of fit out of focus. Like, it's daguerreotype. You're sort of only focused on what's like center and important, like very much vignette, like old style photos. There was something we were talking about like in that fight where I'm like, 5 seconds before it happened, I was like, oh no, that cabinet's gonna get thrown, isn't it? Like animation, guess which object is gonna get interacted with versus just what's the background. Like, she throws that cabinet over that I went, oh no, the tea sets. And then they just fucking go. It was her going, he could always satisfy me more than you. And then just the immediate like, Robert, what are we doing here? Hello? Is now the time? Like,
oh my god.
Fucking wild, but like, honestly, still pretty beat for beat followed the original Nosferatu, while then just giving him all this room to play with, like, and then what can we do here in between? Like, this was an hour 20-minute movie. I want to add another hour and then some, with no reading dialogue cards for 10 seconds at a time. We're gonna double it and give it to the next person.
2024. This Nosferatu fucks.
Literally.
This Nosferatu fucks, but it also is so much more interested in the thematic ideas of rationalism versus romanticism in such an exciting way, because here are these characters that really get a short shrift in the 1922, which is Ellen and Dafoe's character. Because Dafoe's character appears for like 30 seconds in the OG.
He's just a Google search.
He's just like, yeah, I'm here too. We better go save your wife. And then they get there and she's dead already. Oh, darn.
Oh, no.
Whereas Dafoe's character in this movie, because he's actually in it, gets to be there for so much longer, and actually like an investigative force of understanding the phenomenon.
Why did I feel like this movie is like an A24 fans version of a character in Marvel coming back? When they just see Willem Dafoe on screen, they all start clapping along.
I mean, it's kind of the Eggers cinematic universe with William Dafoe. Yeah.
I was making the joke though that at the end of the credits we were going to get a Nosferatu will return.
Willem Dafoe will return.
Yeah!
In the next Eggers installment.
All right, I think that counts as final thoughts here, so let's wrap this thing up. Thank you very much for listening to our show and for braving the wilderness of 2025 with us.
Woohoo!
You can find us on Instagram at LibArtistsPod, and now you can find all of our audio content on YouTube, as well as our OG homes of Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Ian, where can we find you on the internet?
Oh, you can just sort of find me.
I will find you.
I am a playwright and scholar, so you can find me in some published compendiums, but also you can find me on the New Play Exchange, where I have wonderful, wonderful plays that are dense and unproducible. Try your best.
Join us next time when we also start to produce unproducible play works about Nosferatu, because it's public domain, and you know what? He's gonna fuck again.
Nosferatu returns.
The fucking
Nosferatu 2049, as played by Harrison Ford. Get off my castle. Peace.
The Liberal Artists Podcast premieres every other Thursday on your favorite podcasting platform. The show is hosted by Bodhi Opapula, Kaylie Horowitz, and Andy Gibson. You can find the show at Liberal Artists Pod on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks to White Hot for performing the theme song Reflect, which can be found on freebeats.io. Now, I'm off to go exploring, and maybe, just maybe, I'll find a sheep that I can call my own. Good day.
If you'd like to keep up with us on socials, you can find us at libarts. I'm gonna retry that. I'm a failure. Ian does it right every time, but it's because we have a recording of 2021 where he did it right.
Oh God.
Well, I can always update that for you.
No,
I might.
It's part of our heritage.
Okay.
It's just gonna be our time capsule.
Ian
forever.
still hasn't found that sheep.
I'm still looking. I'm still looking for a sheep.